If you're cis and you won't date trans folks, you're transphobe.
AntiTrans Feminists are what we call biological essentialists, right? They say sex is real.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is it not? Are we on different planets right now?
Trans women are biological women.
Sex was a thing of the past. Science had progressed so far that sex was unimportant. I argued the opposite.
Hi guys, it's Misha and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about a term that I saw about 2 years ago, and I knew it was something to do with transphobia, but I never really looked into it. And then yesterday I was on TikTok and I saw a video about Dylan Mulvaney, and it was something about a TERF, something to do with that term again. So today I thought we would look into it.
Hi ladies, how you doing?
I want to kill you!
Oh yeah, take a number, honey.
Before we do that, I want to briefly talk about Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan is a trans TikToker who has this series, The Days of Being Like a Girl, and there's just a bunch of stereotypes.
Girl, and I have already cried 3 times.
Dylan was also recently invited to the Forbes Women's Summit, and that's like taking away a spot from a biological woman who could actually talk about her experience growing up as a girl, something Dylan obviously can't do. In my opinion, this is very similar to what happened with Leah Thomas. In that situation with taking away opportunities from biological women who could have won. And here we have Dylan Mulvaney. If this was some sort of trans event, I understand that. I see no problem with Dylan being there. And don't get me wrong, Dylan seems like a very positive person. However, I still have an issue with these, stereotypical TikToks where it's like, oh, this is my purse, and today, day 400 of being a girl, I'm gonna go frolic in the fields and be clumsy, because a lot of the TikToks are like that. Also, I thought the narrative from the left was that you were always that gender, right? So if you are a trans woman, you were always a woman inside. You were born into the wrong body. It just took you time to realize that and come out and then transition and whatnot. But this is going against that narrative if you're saying that, oh, it started at a certain point. Like at one day you decided that it's day 1 of being a woman. So back to the term TERF, I think it's time that I research it and figure out what it actually means. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you guys don't miss any of my videos. TERF is a term that the woke individuals like to call people that don't really believe that trans women should be included in feminism. And that, the two things are different. The lived experiences of biological women and trans women are very different. But yeah, so I guess they call them TERFs. But apparently those people actually call themselves gender critical feminists or radfems. So I guess let's start with some videos on YouTube that try to explain this term, and hopefully we can learn what this really is.
It stands for Trans-Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Now the trans-exclusionary part of this is overwhelmingly to do with their treatment and attitudes towards trans women, although this does also map onto trans men as well. The idea essentially that trans women are not women and the only kinds of real women are cis women.
Trans women are real women. Trans women are biological women. TERFs don't get to decide what makes a woman real just because they hate trans people. Trans women are biological women.
TERFs are transphobic because they don't view trans women as real women. My question is, what are you trying to say by real women? You mean biological women? Because then, yeah, because they're not biological women. I mean, that's like a fact. How is this even debatable?
TERFs would prefer a more politically correct term, but we can't allow them to dictate the kind of language we use.
I find that incredibly ironic. Saying that you can't dictate language when that's all the left does. Honestly, with the pronoun stuff, right? So you can't say what's politically correct, right? But that's what you're doing on a daily basis. Like, that's literally what you're known for, is policing people's language. This is actually so funny. There's also this video, Understanding the Logic of TERFs.
And my specialty as a scholar is in 19th century race science. Anti-trans feminists are what we call biological essentialists, right? They say sex is real.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is it not? Are we on different planets right now? What does race have to do with this? These people will always find a way to get racism involved.
That there is a universal woman's experience ignores, as you say, all the class and race components to it as well, but ignores the often very traumatic experience of growing up trans in a society that is immensely hostile to that, where that is a set of its own unique experiences and trauma. And then someone like J.K. Rowling has very publicly basically devalued that or said that that is separate and distinct, when obviously there is no way to make that delineation, except if you're trying to reach a conclusion that is bigoted.
No, there is not one way to be a woman. But women in general have similar experiences. They're saying that there's no universal experience as a woman, right? But then what's the point of feminism? Well, obviously, every woman has a different experience, but if there's not a general, problem facing women, then you're literally erasing the struggle that the suffragettes, for example, had to go through. At the time, women didn't have many rights, and that was their experience, and that's what they fought for. So it's crucial to point out how this gender ideology is affecting women, because in general, there is an obvious erasure of womanhood going on. With language specifically, because now we have things like birthing people, menstruating persons. The definition even of a woman is different to every single person. But this idea seems to be erasing trans people as well. And listen, I'm not saying that you have to go get surgery to count as like a trans person. Obviously, that's not even available to many people. A lot of people can't afford it. It's dangerous a lot of the time. A lot of people can't medically transition, and I get that. But then at the same time, you can't expect the rest of society to view you as whatever gender you feel inside and then get offended when someone misgenders you. Since these people seem to think that they have the right, for example, to walk into a women's restroom without presenting as a woman and, making the women uncomfortable, like, you have to think about other people. You're not the only person on this planet. In fact, you're the minority. And what the left likes to preach is that you don't owe anybody, a certain presentation of yourself. You don't have to pass as the gender that you feel inside. But then what's the point of transitioning? And I think that's where the distinction can be made between someone who actually has gender dysphoria and wants to present as the opposite gender so that society can view them as such and address them with those pronouns, and someone who wakes up a certain day and says, I want people to refer to me as whatever pronoun that I've come up with today. And they like to say that gender is a social construct or that it simply does not exist, right? So then how can you be born in the wrong body if gender is not a thing? They also call people TERFs when they don't want to date a trans person.
If you're cis and you won't date trans folks, you're transphobe. Now, if that made you mad, maybe it's your prejudices that you need to probe.
For the same reason, right? So they'll say, oh, so you don't want to date a trans woman? It's because you don't view her as a real woman, right? Or they'll say, well, it depends, if you're a TERF or not, because you have to tell us why you don't want to date a trans woman. Why do you owe anyone an explanation why you don't want to date a certain person? Like, do these people feel entitled and like everyone has to be attracted to them? You don't have to explain yourself. If you don't want to date someone, then you don't have to date someone. That's what sexuality is. You might not be attracted to trans women. I think it was Ariel Scarcella who made an amazing video about this, and I remember her talking about it. So she is a lesbian, right? And there are people calling her a TERF because she said that trans women are different than women, right? And apparently this makes her a TERF or whatever. So it's just ridiculous.
Trump was the first president to enter into the office as pro-LGBT. First Republican to ever be pro-gay.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me.
No, of course, the White House is to blame. The White House is to blame for the rise in the anti-LGBT groups. I mean, look at all the good we've been doing lately. All that banging on the windows, punching 60-year-old women, screaming at people who disagree with us, refusing to have conversations, name-calling new genders of the week, anger directed at celebrities, and canceling anyone who disagrees with your rhetoric.
So why are we putting trans rights over gay rights? So if a gay man didn't want to date a trans man, then he's bigoted and he has no choice. He has to date the trans man. What? You're a TERF if you want to date a biological man or a biological woman.
Many women like myself have been pushed out of spaces that that we built, spaces that are intended to include us, simply because we acknowledge biological reality.
You're a lesbian. You are in the same acronym as a bunch of other groups, including people who are transgendered.
LG and B are based on sexualities. They're based on sex, biological realities.
Yes.
But the T is based on gender identity, which is not based in biological reality. In fact, I would argue that it's opposed to biological reality. The LGB is very different from the T, and I don't think it's fair to lump us all into the same acronym. One of the members of my committee argued that sex was a thing of the past. He said, frankly, science had progressed so far that sex was unimportant. I argued the opposite.
And when you try to explain that you are simply advocating for biological women's rights, they will say that that is contributing to harassment and even the death of trans women. I mean, that's absurd. Protecting women's spaces is totally valid, especially when we have men who can now just decide that they want to identify as a woman, make that a reality legally, and then have access to women's spaces or, you know, steal medals from women. I mean, this is all happening. That's all for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.